Prince Andrew has been forced to leave Buckingham Palace after being told by the King and his brother that he can no longer live.
For years, Prince Andrew remained in the background of royal affairs, but in a shocking turn of events, he was chosen to read Queen Elizabeth II's final will. What unfolded inside Buckingham Palace left the royal family and the world stunned. As Andrew revealed the Queen's final wishes, deep secrets, hidden tensions, and long-simmering rivalries came to light. Why was King Charles sidelined? What was in the content of the will? Join us as we unpack the chaos triggered by the Queen's last will, Queen Elizabeth's last testament revealed. In one of the most dramatic and tear-jerking scenes that would never have been expected of a royal and centuries of tradition, Prince Andrew was the one who was given the responsibility to read the last will and testament of Queen Elizabeth II. The royal family was seated in seclusion, with the pictures of their forefathers and centuries of history all around them in the walls of Windsor Castle. There had been a long-held assumption that the new monarch, King Charles III, would perform this solemn duty. However, in a turn of events, even those who were closest to her did not anticipate that the late Queen had clearly indicated that she wanted her second-born son, Andrew, to read out her last words. Clutching the cream-colored document embossed with the royal seal, Andrew's hands trembled slightly as he stood at the lectern. There was silence as the room awaited the words of Britain's longest-serving monarch, words she had written with clarity and intention long before her passing. In the will, the Queen had addressed her family as her beloved. She had expressed gratitude for their support throughout her decades of public service, thanked them for their loyalty, and acknowledged the sacrifices each of them had made for the crown and for their country. She began by addressing her eldest son, now King Charles III, with both respect and maternal warmth. She had referred to him as her firstborn and the rightful heir, acknowledging that the burden and the honor of the crown now rested upon him. She stated that he had been bequeathed the sovereign grant, along with all the obligations and responsibilities that came with it. The message of the Queen then echoed the importance of the sovereign grant, which is an important financial framework that helps the British monarchy. She reminded the family of its roots in the 1760 agreement made by King George III, who surrendered royal income from Parliament in exchange for a fixed annual payment. This arrangement, once called the Civil List, was reformed into the Sovereign Grant in 2012. Under the current terms, the monarch receives 25% of the profits from the Crown Estate, a portfolio of properties and holdings worth $19 billion, as compensation for surrendering control of those assets to the government. In 2021, the Queen noted that the Crown Estate generated $361 million in net profit, from which the sovereign grant, amounting to $100 million, was derived. It is this fund that ensures the upkeep of royal properties, travel arrangements, and the salaries of those who serve the institution. Andrew then moved on to read the portion concerning Princess Anne. The Queen had addressed her daughter with admiration, acknowledging that Anne had carried herself with dignity, discretion, and unwavering devotion. She had expressed deep appreciation for Anne's commitment to duty, often carried out without spotlight or fanfare, something the Queen had always admired. There was a pause as Andrew glanced in Anne's direction. The Queen had stated that Anne was to receive a share of the sovereign grant as a reflection of her exceptional service and steadfast loyalty. She noted that Anne had earned it not through title, but through tireless work. She had also acknowledged that Anne was the one privileged to be with her in her final hours, a quiet presence of strength and love. Indeed, Princess Anne had been the only one of the Queen's children to accompany her on the journey from Balmoral to London, and had spent the final 24 hours of her mother's life by her side. The will acknowledged this not as a basis for inheritance, but as a deeply personal note of recognition. As the will unfolded further, distributing personal heirlooms, issuing words of love and final reflections, the meaning behind the Queen's choice of Andrew as her reader began to come into focus, whether as an act of maternal grace, a message of forgiveness, or a final bid to reunite a fractured family. Her decision was clear. In her last moments, she still held the power to surprise, to heal, and to remind them all of their shared heritage and responsibility. Seeing as Andrew is the reader, Do you think he might be left out of the will? A parting gift of gratitude. When Prince Andrew stepped forward once again to read the portion of the Queen's will that concerned him, the room shifted. What had started as a solemn reading of a matriarch's farewell soon took on a more personal tone. Now, it was Andrew's name being called out in the Queen's final words, not just as her son, but as someone she had chosen to acknowledge with tenderness and trust. The Queen had left Andrew a share of the sovereign grant, just like she did for her other children, Princess Anne and Prince Edward. While the specific details of each share were not made public, what mattered more in that moment was the sentiment behind the gesture. Despite the storms he had weathered publicly and privately in recent years, the Queen had chosen not to erase him from the picture, but to include him, quietly, deliberately, in the family's future. But it was what came next that made several in the room pause. In words both nostalgic and affectionate, the Queen had also entrusted Andrew with two of her beloved corgis, Muke and Sandy. These weren't just any royal pets, they had history, heart, and meaning woven into their little paws. Muke, pronounced Mick, named after Loch Muick on the Queen's cherished Balmoral estate, had been a source of comfort to her during one of the most difficult periods of her life. In the spring of 2021, as Prince Philip lay in the hospital during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, Andrew, along with his daughters Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie, had given the Queen two puppies, Muick and Fergus, in hopes of lifting her spirits. It had actually been the Duchess of York, Sarah Ferguson, who found the puppies. She and Andrew had agreed they would be a gift from all of them. The Queen had accepted them with quiet joy, and they quickly became a constant source of cheer in Windsor Castle's halls. Fergus, a Dorgie, a cross between a Dachshund and a Corgi, was named in honor of the Queen's maternal uncle, Captain Fergus Bowes-Lyon, who had died in World War I. Sadly, little Fergus passed away just 5 months later due to a heart defect. Not long after, and perhaps sensing that the Queen needed something to fill the absence Fergus had left behind, Andrew brought her a new corgi for her 95th birthday. That dog was Sandy, who quickly found a place by Muke's side and, more importantly, at the Queen's feet. According to Angela Kelly, the Queen's longtime dresser and personal assistant, the dogs brought Her Majesty immeasurable joy. They followed her everywhere, often lightening even the heaviest of days. It made sense then that the Queen would want Muke and Sandy to return to the home they came from, under the care of the Duke and Duchess of York, and perhaps watched over lovingly by the same daughters who had helped choose them. It wasn't just a request. It was a full-circle moment, a quiet return to family, to love, to the simple joys that had carried her through uncertain days. As Andrew finished reading his portion, the attention turned briefly to his younger brother, Prince Edward, the Earl of Wessex. The Queen had made sure that he, too, received a share of the sovereign grant. Edward, her youngest child, had always been the quieter royal, less in the public eye, more behind the scenes. He had built a stable family with his wife, Sophie Rhys-Jones, whom he married in 1999. Together, they had 2 children, Lady Louise Windsor and James, Viscount Severn, both of whom had grown up somewhat shielded from the intense spotlight that followed their older cousins. Though the Queen hadn't listed the exact sum of what Edward would receive, it was clear that, like Anne and Andrew, he was included not just as a formality, but as a recognition of his steady service and unshakable presence over the years. Was the Queen's possession only for her children? The Queen's final touch. As Prince Andrew continued reading the Queen's will, the air in the room shifted once more. His voice, already heavy with the weight of responsibility, took on a softer tone when he reached the next name. He looked up for a moment and then read aloud that the Queen had addressed William as her dearest. At that point, all eyes turned to the Prince of Wales, and those watching closely could see a quiet flicker of emotion in his face. Something like relief, maybe even peace. The Queen had evidently given some serious consideration to the position of William, not only in the royal family, but also in the future of the royal family. According to what Andrew read, Prince William had become the official heir of the Duchy of Cornwall, a privately owned estate that had been inherited over the years. This estate, previously owned by his father, King Charles, before his accession to the throne, is now under William's stewardship. The Duchy of Cornwall isn't just symbolic. It's a vast property portfolio made up of over 140,000 acres across England and Wales, with an estimated value of about $1.2 billion. More than land and buildings, it is used to raise income to provide the Duke of Cornwall with funds to carry out his public, private, and charitable responsibilities. It was a legacy and promise to William, a legacy which links the present to the past, a promise which sets the future in place. But the Queen didn't stop there. Kate, the Princess of Wales, was also named directly in the will, something that took many in the room by surprise. Over the years, Kate had shown herself to be more than just a supportive royal spouse. She had stepped into public life with grace, consistently engaging with causes close to her heart and handling the pressures of royal life with quiet strength. The Queen had evidently taken note. In a late change to the document, something even Andrew hadn't been aware of until that very moment, the Queen had arranged for Kate to inherit a significant part of her personal jewelry collection. Unlike the crown jewels, which belonged to the state, these were private pieces owned solely by Her Majesty. The collection includes over 300 pieces, necklaces, brooches, earrings, and bracelets, many of which were seen on the Queen during her decades of public service. This inheritance of approximately $110 million shocked the people in the room. Andrew even stopped reading after reading that paragraph and was obviously calculating the monstrosity of the gesture. It was not only jewels, but legacy, symbolism, and personal appreciation. The Queen had seen in Kate someone who would carry on the quiet elegance of royal womanhood, and she had chosen to mark that with something deeply meaningful. And yet, not everyone received something. As the reading continued, it became clear that Prince Harry had not been included in the Queen's final distribution of assets. His name was not mentioned, and no inheritance was designated to him from the Queen's personal fortune. While that fact no doubt stung, especially given the family tensions in recent years, it's important to note that Harry had already received a significant inheritance from his mother, Princess Diana. When he and William turned 25, they each inherited a portion of Diana's estate, reportedly around $10 million each, according to Forbes. It had been a gift meant to secure their futures, long before the Queen's passing. What do you think would happen seeing as some royals were left out of the will? The Queen's will deepened royal rift. Now that the contents of the will of Queen Elizabeth II have been revealed, what was supposed to be a time of quiet reflection has turned into a time to resurrect old conflicts and reopen old wounds within the royal family. Instead of bringing the House of Windsor together, the choices made by the Queen, particularly those on her own jewelry collection, have apparently caused new resentment and resurrected a widening rift that has been tearing the family apart over the past few years. At the center of the tension is Catherine, the Princess of Wales. According to Radar Online, Queen Elizabeth had grown especially close to Kate in the final months of her life. That bond, which had been built on years of quiet loyalty and shared values, reportedly influenced the Queen's decision to leave Kate a staggering $110 million worth of her personal jewelry. The inheritance includes over 300 pieces, brooches, earrings, necklaces, and heirlooms that were part of the Queen's most personal collection, separate from the crown jewels. To the public, it seemed a fitting gesture. Kate has long been praised for her grace under pressure and her dedication to the monarchy. But behind palace doors, that decision did not go unnoticed by everyone, and not necessarily in a good way. Sources told Radar Online that the Queen's generous gift to Kate stirred quiet resentment in Queen Consort Camilla. While Camilla now holds the title and status of Queen alongside King Charles, insiders claim that she felt slighted by the late monarch's apparent favoritism. A palace source reportedly mentioned that Kate was clearly the family favorite. Although she would never admit it herself, the source suggested that this was one of the reasons Camilla had resented her. The tension has only intensified with the news that Kate plans to eventually pass some of those jewels to her daughter, Princess Charlotte. While the gesture is seen as a thoughtful and natural move, ensuring that the Queen's memory lives on in the next generation, it has also underscored who is in the royal fold and who is not. That distinction has been especially glaring when it comes to Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. The feud between Prince Harry and Prince William is no secret. What started as a friendship between two close brothers has been ruined by the burden of personal decisions, media interviews, and incompatible life goals. The change occurred in 2020 when Harry and Meghan resigned as senior royals, citing mental health issues, press intrusion, and the institution failing to support them. Their explosive interview with Oprah Winfrey the following year only deepened the divide. Now the Queen's will appears to have driven the wedge even further. Despite being her grandson, Prince Harry was reportedly left out of any meaningful inheritance from the Queen's personal estate. In a report from Radar Online in September 2022, insiders revealed that there was a very good chance the Queen won't leave either Harry or Meghan any jewels of value. One source added that it was not surprising, since they're not members of the royal family anymore, but it would be a real slap in the face. While Prince Harry and Meghan have not publicly responded to the claims, the absence of their names in the Queen's will has been widely interpreted as more than just a matter of protocol. It has raised questions about forgiveness, family loyalty, and the cost of choosing a different path. Perhaps the most controversial detail in the report is the suggestion that while Kate and William intend to share some of the jewelry with Princess Charlotte, they may also consider setting aside pieces for their niece, Lilibet Diana, Harry, and Meghan's daughter. A source told Radar Online that they genuinely didn't want Lilibet to be left out, emphasizing that, regardless of the tension among the adults, the children should not be held responsible. The source added bluntly that, as for Meghan, she was not their concern. Why Meghan was left out remains a matter of speculation. Some believe it was out of sheer practicality. She and Harry, after all, are no longer working royals. Others, however, see it as a message from the Queen herself. "You reap what you sow," the source said, hinting at years of tension, mistrust, and disappointment. In a family where symbolism is everything, the Queen's will may have spoken louder than any statement. Through her choices, she made clear who she saw as part of the future and who had stepped too far away from the past. Now that Charles is now the king, can he go against the will? Prince Andrew's fight for his home. Prince Andrew is once again at the center of royal headlines, not for public appearances or charitable work, but because of an ongoing disagreement that's slowly brewing into a major rift between him and his older brother, King Charles III. At the heart of the issue is Royal Lodge, a 30-room mansion tucked away in the Windsor estate, which has been Andrew's residence for over 2 decades. But now, his future in the grand home is uncertain. Sources close to the royal household say that Andrew is involved in what they described as a rumbling dispute with King Charles over the property. The king, who has been more determined to reduce the size of the monarchy since inheriting the throne, is said to want his younger sibling to leave Royal Lodge and downsize to Frogmore Cottage, the former UK residence of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. In what appears to be a push to make that happen, King Charles made a bold move last year. According to reports, he cut Andrew's annual allowance of £1 million, a sum previously used to help cover the Duke's lifestyle and property upkeep. On top of that, security funding for the mansion was also slashed. It was a clear message that things were changing. But Andrew hasn't backed down. Despite no longer being a working royal, a status change that came after his now infamous 2019 Newsnight interview, where he faced tough questions about his association with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, he's managed to stay afloat financially. Andrew is said to have secured private funding, which he now uses to maintain Royal Lodge independently. Back in 2003, the Duke of York signed a long-term lease agreement with the Crown Estate. The deal allows him to stay at Royal Lodge for 75 years, and under the terms, he is responsible for the property's upkeep. Since then, it's estimated that he's poured about £7.5 million into renovating the home, particularly focusing on maintaining the interior. However, disagreements have now arisen over who should be footing the bill for major external repairs. A report by the Daily Mail highlighted that while Andrew has kept the inside of the home in good condition, the exterior is showing serious signs of wear. Crumbling stonework and peeling paint are said to be visible in recent photographs. Sources shared that the prince believes he has done his part and that there's confusion and disagreement about who is responsible for the substantial and costly repairs needed on the outside of the building. Even with his lease, Andrew may not be entirely secure. He is entitled to a partial refund on his expenses if he is asked to leave after the first 25 years of his lease, which ends in 2028. Until then, he appears determined to stay put. But staying comes at a steep price. According to property expert Robin Edwards of Cureton's, just maintaining the estate now likely costs Andrew close to £5 million each year. Inflation, time, and the scale of the home have caused costs to skyrocket since he first moved in. The property is massive, and so are the bills. Staffing, for instance, is no small matter. Edwards noted that a property of this size would need a full household team, including a house manager, chefs, butlers, maintenance workers, and several housekeepers. Their salaries alone could run between £350,000 and £500,000 annually. Then there's the garden. An estate of this size would require constant care from a team of at least 4 to 6 full-time gardeners, with costs estimated between £150,000 and £250,000 each year. Despite the mounting costs, Andrew shares the property with his former wife, Sarah Ferguson, the Duchess of York, and he seems intent on staying. Friends of the Duke have said he is determined to hold on, viewing Royal Lodge as not just a home, but one of the few remaining pieces of his royal identity. Do you think the rift can ever come to an end? Is there a possibility that there might be another will? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.